Terence, good afternoon. How are you, man?
Good afternoon. How are you? I'm good. It's 6 o'clock in the Philippines, so it's already good evening here. Good. Is it good afternoon or good morning there, Julian?
It's still good morning. We're about 11 o'clock in London on this fine day, and yeah, it's nice to finally get hold of you. I know you're a difficult man to catch up with these days, so thanks a lot for coming on board and talking about your adventures and all of that stuff. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, dude, no problem. Like I'm super excited as well to finally catch up with you. And yeah, like I'm okay. I'm not super busy, but I'm just moving from one place to the next. So I never know what my schedule would be. But yeah, man.
And so, where are you right now? I can see a beautiful tropical background for those people who are only listening to this. There's Terence is sat with some palm trees, and it looks like maybe some sea in the distance. Where are you?
Uh, right now I'm in Palawan, so specifically in Puerto Princesa. I'm sure you are familiar with Palawan, so yeah, like just for some people who don't know, like Palawan was actually voted best island. Although it's not an island, it's a group of islands. But I'm in the main island of Palawan now, and there are a lot of islands and islets. So yeah, specifically, I am in Puerto Princesa because I have a project here. But nowadays, I'm actually based in El Nido, which is the northern tip of the main island of Palawan.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you. I mean, obviously, we've done a Philippines trip, and we do a Philippines trip, which is not in that area, but it's around, around Boracay, which I know you're familiar with. And when
Yeah.
people say that this, these are some of the best islands in the world, sometimes you hear that story, but without a doubt, my experience in the Philippines is been always just phenomenal. So I wouldn't argue with you on that point. What
Yep. Well, I for me, of course, I am biased. Of
what
course, I'm a little biased, but yeah,
Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay here, so excuse that. What are you actually working on right now? Like, what are the projects? And maybe you can just give a little bit of a brief intro to kind of what you're doing and what you have been doing, and then we can take it from there.
okay. A background of like basically what like entire like what I do, or just specifically here now.
No, a bit of both.
Okay. Well, yeah. So I'm Terence. So I own a digital design agency, which is Jagged Perspective. So we do everything from like web development, graphic design, photography, and video production. So now I'm actually going around Palawan. I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but it was always been my dream to actually live like an island life. But I had to stay in the city, which is the capital of the Philippines, which is Manila, because most of our work are based there and all of the shoots. So yeah, so that's what I do. People would know me more as a photographer because that's what I post all the time. So it's easier to actually relate on a photograph versus like, oh, we did this like Shopify site. So yeah, so and that's also it's for me it's the easiest, not easiest, but it's one great tool to have nowadays, especially when you're traveling, right? So it's very relatable. And yeah, so that's what I do. Like I run a digital design agency, but people know me more as a traveling photographer.
Yeah, and that's certainly how I obviously I met you through that route from your amazing photography and stuff, because you obviously joined us on our Lanka challenge. I can't remember the exact year, but a few years ago, and actually produced a really cool video as a result of that as well. And I'm hoping to kind of
Mm-hmm.
capture your memories of the Lanka challenge and doing that tuk-tuk rally in Sri Lanka a little bit later on. But another reason that I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to really kind of catch up with you is because I obviously been following your work and love what you do and everything in the Philippines. But something that really caught my attention was your experience. You know, obviously global pandemic. I think everybody that I know, or all the countries that we work in across, Southeast Asia, Asia, in fact, across the world, I think most people have had a lockdown version, or a version of a lockdown, where the governments
Mm-hmm.
and countries have basically shut their borders, really limited movement, and things like that. But you had a really special story that caught my attention, and I really wanted to kind of go through that with you. I'll probably leave it to you to give the intro, to give the main details, and correct me if I'm wrong. You left Manila, so obviously a busy metropolis, crazy city, capital of the Philippines, and headed for Coron, Palawan, at your
That's
first
right.
lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And then you ended up being stuck there
Mm-hmm.
for, not stuck, I suppose you probably enjoyed most of it, but in a pretty remote corner of the Philippines for a good part of 4 to 5 months.
Yeah. Well, when I went to the Coron Island, which like my first, that was my first 2 months of lockdown. So I was there 2 months, and then I actually went to the main island of Coron and stayed there for another 8 to 9 months. So yep. So yeah.
And what actually happened there? What played out? Because from what I understand, you were staying with a small community who, from what I understand, own the island. A community, and you'll probably have to correct my pronunciation here, but the Tagbuana community, is that right?
Uh, it's Tagbanua.
Tagbanua. There you go.
Tagbanua. Yeah, yeah. There you go. Okay, so yeah, so I guess I'll start my story when that was March. I think that was March 12 or March 13. When our president announced that there will be a nationwide lockdown by March 15, and we like a corona, the pandemic is already happening, but we knew about it. We knew about I think that time was China and Italy. They were in all the headlines, right? But I guess it took a little like later for us to reach us, right? Although I think our first, if I'm not mistaken, our first infection was probably January or Feb. That's why when the president announced that there's going to be a lockdown, it was really, for me, it was something that I can still remember like perfectly, because it never happened. It like in my lifetime, it never happened. For the first time, I'm on like the Philippines. The president of the Philippines is in national TV and saying that all the airports, all the seaports will be closed, and for me, it was just crazy. And my brain was already working that time. Even though I'm based in the city, I'm based in one of, I guess you can call it the central business district of the Philippines. It's super busy, and but even I'm based there, I always go out of town I always do projects that are, like around like the islands of the Philippines and sometimes out of the country. So for me, upon hearing this, I was, I was nervous a bit, but something inside me, it was a hunch that like I don't want to get locked down in my apartment. I love work. I love my place. I love my apartment. I have all my plants there. But like even when I was living in Manila, I never stay home. Like my I have a creative agency which is just super near my office, and I would always go out. I would be in my office for a bit, and then I'll go out and have coffee, have my meetings there, and at night I'll go out because that's where all the travelers are. We are in the center of the like a lot of like tourists that come in the Philippines. They stay in this area called Poblacion. This is where the number one hostels are. So I never really stay at home. So yeah, so what happened when they announced it? The next day, I booked the ticket going to Coron. And why did I choose Coron? Actually, I never really, in my mind, when that was happening, I was actually selecting different islands like Coron, Siargao, El Nido, like beaches that are just 2 hours away from Manila. So my mind was actually just, deciding, okay, where can I go for a month or two that has fast internet and that I'm like with nature. So those were my only requirements. And it's a good thing that like my friend who actually has like a camp. It's called Red Carabao. So it's an expedition where they bring the tourist in this in one part in a beach in Coron Island. And like what you said, like Coron Island is actually an ancestral domain of the Tagbanua. So the Tagbanua are one of our like tribes here in the Philippines, and they were awarded that land. And my friend who is actually working with them, I message him that like, okay, I don't want to get locked down in Manila. Can I stay at the camp? Can I stay with like the tribe? And like I might stay there. Can I just I can take pictures. I'll buy my own food as long as I'm there. And then he said yes. So it was just his IG story as well. That I was browsing through, and then I'm like, okay, yeah, what about Coron? And the good thing about that is that happened March, but I actually stayed at that camp last November, just for 2 3 days, and that's where I actually, like that's why I discovered like, okay, there's a fast internet here because the island next to it has like a Two Seasons hotel, and there's a mobile a site, like a mobile site.
Yeah.
So the internet's fast, and yeah. So that was kind of like my decision making that time.
And then what? So what? Like, how remote is this then? Is this a couple of boat rides to the island, or is this once you were there, were you completely cut off because of the lockdown and stuff?
Mm-hmm. Well, Coron Island is actually just this particular cove is just around 30 minutes away from the main island of Coron called Busuanga. So it's not really, it's not super remote that you have to trek and take a boat and do this just to get there. But it's remote in like where I stayed. There's no electricity. Of course, there's solar just for charging your phone and your laptop. But at 6 o'clock, lights are like off already. But since it's actually the main ancestral domain of the tribe, there were no, there were no lockdown there basically. So I was staying in this island where I can, by the beach, where I can, when I'm sleeping, I don't actually have like I don't have walls. I just
Yeah.
have like a roof, and then there's no door. I mean, that's, yeah, there's no door, so I can see a bit of the stars and the water. So when I sleep, I wake up with birds chirping, and then with the ocean just flowing. So yeah, so it was actually one of the best decisions of my life to actually spend my lockdown there. So I never imagined, I never imagined that it would be longer. It will be, like, if you know, the Philippines we have the longest lockdown in the world. But that was my lockdown story. Like, I wake up in this beach, and like, it's in this cove. We're only around 8 people.
So from what I saw from some of your photographs and reading some of your writings from your experience, it was, I mean, it seems that community, kind of like a almost subsistence farming, subsistence survival. They kind of live off the land. They've been there for, well, it sounds as though from what you're saying, probably hundreds of years in that area.
Yeah.
And they, so their daily life is basically living off the sea, living off that small cove. What was that like? Because you were getting kind of very hands-on in the experience of obviously participating in living with them and helping them, I think build boats. You most of the food I think I saw you cooking, because you're a bit of a chef as well, was kind of either caught or from the domestic animals. What was that part like? Was it like, were you fully ready for that? Is that what you were expecting, or was that like a whole different element to that lockdown?
Well, the part of the reason why I really wanted, like, that was included in my top three list where I'm gonna go, is I've always been interested of, it goes through our, like, Philippines has a long history of not having a history, because we were colonized by the Spanish for 350 years, and then of course the Americans came, the Japanese. So it's so hard for like someone like me to, it's not like I can ask my great grandfather. It's like, what is a real Filipino? Like, how were we before the colonizers? Because after 350 years, that's gonna be hard to like keep track what's there, right? So for me, the Tagbanua were actually a link, like a direct link from like the heritage of us before all
To like
the
your
colonizers came.
ancestral past, yeah.
Yes, and also uh, and basically, like, it was. I've always been fascinated with National Geographic, when they're actually, like, I grew up watching different photographers and different filmmakers that they go to a remote place in Africa and document how the tribes live. And in my mind, in hindsight, I always wanted to do that, but I knew that, I know that I take good photos, but I know I'm not like a Nat Geo level photographer, to get a project that will like an immersion where you spend months or two to live with like a tribe community. So for me, being there was surreal, and at the same time, it's like being a kid again. It's like, it's like if our history books were that interactive, like, I would have really, in a young age, I would appreciate history more, right? Like, because growing up, we just read about, like, our ancestor. Oh, they live here, this is how they look like, and this is how they get their food. it's very simple. It's very like you don't see the like the philosophy in it, the like their daily lives. So for me, being there and I was like I considered myself as a Tagbanua intern. That's what I was doing in the island. So I was like looking at them and like watching them how they spearfish for the first time. I was there. I was so amazed. I've seen it in videos before, and there's a really good article or like a video from BBC that I watched, and it's actually one of the tribes in the Philippines. Like a spearfisher goes under the sea and then
I
spearfish.
think I've
And for
seen that.
me,
Yeah.
I like when I was underwater, I was yeah. So I was really it was amazing for me, and it was my first time to actually see them going down, and so and they don't have the fins, right? They just have like a makeshift like fin, like they get
It's like a wooden,
a piece
almost a
of
paddle that was
plywood.
attached to their feet or hands, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, a piece of plywood, and then they get anything like any strap from like an old bag or like anything to just strap it, and then they go down and down till you don't see them anymore, and then like with one hit they already have a fish, and then I wasn't expecting it at all because I was also like filming it, and I didn't know that once they catch a fish, they actually bite the head. So it happened right in front of my face. I was like watching it, and then when my the Tagbanua spearfisher was going up, I was actually in front of him, and I have my GoPro filming it as well. And then he was holding the fish like that, and he bit the fish, and for me it was like, oh wow. So
Was that
it was
to stop?
very very mind blowing.
Was that to stop like attracting sharks or something like that, or just to kill
No,
the fish instantly?
because just to kill the fish instantly, because if you hit the fish through the stomachs and you didn't hit any vital parts, even the smallest fish are so like what they call this, like they can still get away.
Yeah.
So yeah, so they really like if they hit the fish on the head, that's instant. The fish is like not moving at all. But when you hit the body, you have to actually bite the head so that once you get the fish, it wouldn't like swim away.
Nice. So that was. So I guess living off the sea was a large part of it. But what I mean, you were talking about the link and their history. Living in that area. What are the like? Was there any things that you kind of? I mean, you must have learned loads, but are there any kind of key things that really stick with you of like the historical links or the stories that they must be like telling you? Is there anything that really kind of sticks with you, or that really kept strong memories of from being there?
Actually a lot. Like every day, like I learn like a different lesson. But for me, I guess it's for me it's always a reflection of being a city boy, and so we're so used to and dependent on a mechanism of supplies, right? Like how do we get our food? We get it from like sometimes and most of the time it comes from like China or wherever, ship, ports, trucks, uh, supermarket, and all of that. And then during lockdown, what happened is they closed down the port, and now people can't eat, or people are like panicking, like they're buying tissue paper because you don't know when is the next batch of tissue will come. So it was so crazy for me to be there during lockdown, and like reading the news, and then for me to experience that these people are, if they're hungry, we go spear fishing, and they go under, and then in 20 minutes, less than 20 minutes, they already have a fish, and this fish is the freshest fish that you can find. And yeah, like for me, it's just it's they didn't teach me, directly from their mouth, but like I've seen it. I've seen how far we became, like how we are detached with mother nature, like everything around us. And I just saw the difference between them, that, like in hindsight you will always see that, like, oh, I feel bad for them because they don't have this, they don't have this, they don't have this. So it's a lot of things that you think that they need, but it's the things that I need, right? But then I see them, like they are happy, they have less, like, for us, we're always thinking about the
Material
life.
things,
We're
basically. Yeah.
always yeah, material things, and a lot of things that you have to worry, unnecessary things that we have to worry about. There's always a deadline. We're always like, like we're always looking at time. We always want to be productive, etc., etc. And for them, like, show like and being there, the days are slow, but for me it was very interesting. But it's really living very simple, and like in harmony, and like living like around nature in harmony of like everything. Even spearfishing for me was really, like, of course it's so it sounds so like deadly or barbaric in a way, because you kill the fish and then you bite it. But I also realized, wow, this is the one of the most sustainable way of fishing, because of them having less. They don't have a fridge, they don't have a freezer because there's no electricity in the island. They also don't overfish, so they go there and just fish what they can eat for the day. And then the next day they will just have like four more, and they put salt in it, dry it in the sun. But they're also so spoiled that they don't want to eat like salted fish. They want fresh fish all the time, right? So I mean, that's for me is it, like there's always a trade-off. For us to be staying in a city, we love our comforts. We design, we want to, we actually control everything. In your house, you have your air condition, your heater. You can control it for the right degree, like temperature. Like if you want it, like, I want it 23 degrees. You can control your fridge, you can control the whatever you eat. You can, it's, and then even on like what you watch, like Netflix and YouTube, you can, there's an, of course there's also an algorithm where it can program already, it can feed us what we want. And it's just that we are more and more, we are creating a bubble for ourselves, to be in just this bubble alone. Like we don't need anyone. As long as I have my Netflix, I have my food delivery, I have my my internet. That's it. And and there it's a total opposite. And now I see it, because when you're in the city and you're working your ass off all day long, maybe you don't like your work, maybe you want to kill your boss. Of course, when you get home, you just want to, you need to compensate for something. And then lack of being with nature also, of course, like what are Netflix and what are YouTube, of course, like, don't get me wrong, I love them as well, but it's something to compensate what you're lacking as an experience. Because when I was there, the internet was fast, man. The internet was fast, but I've never really watched any Netflix show. Maybe I watched one or two Netflix shows. That at that time it was like the Tiger King, King Tiger. Like
Yeah,
I
Tiger
forgot
King. I
what was
think
that, but like,
everybody.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, because my friends in Manila and also like around the globe, we have like a WhatsApp group, and like they were talking about that nonstop because it's one of the, I guess, favorite Netflix shows during
Yeah.
lockdown. And for me, I was just so fulfilled and busy, learning about spearfishing, climbing this mountain, just interacting with the Tagbanua. And like I had my phone there, but only to take pictures. But I was also interested, of course, with their stories because everything was new to me. But that was my realization that, like, okay, we actually, like, the less we have, the happier we could be, because it means that, like, the more material things that we have, it means that we're compensating for maybe a lack of, like, nature, lack of human interaction. And yeah, for me, that was like one of the most like the best lesson that I've learned, is to live simple.
It sounds as though it has had a remarkable effect on you, and maybe made big differences on how you've lived since. There's a few things I wanted to ask you on. Well, there's two things. Maybe one was, like, if you could talk me through it, like a day, like your average day there. I mean, I'm assuming you're kind of up at sunrise, or when the chickens start going, and a crack of dawn, and then probably in bed by, I guess, as soon as the sun goes down. Maybe I did hear a few gin stories from you. Maybe that's like local gin. But aside from that, what was, like, talk me through it, like an average day, like what you were doing on average. I did see that you were had some pretty funny like cooking shows where you were teaching, like bringing some of your recipes of trying to use what resources you had available to make, like, some of the food that you were used to. But talk me through, like, an average day for you when you were out there.
Okay. Yeah, an average day is, because I still have to work a bit, like it's not like in the city that I have to work 8 hours. So
Yeah.
my average day, I wake up in the morning, not sunrise. I'll wake up at 7, I guess, or maybe I wake up and then there's really nothing to do. So, like, you're not in that, like, mode where you wake up in the city and you're like, oh my god, like, what do I have to do? What do I have to submit today? Like, check my emails and all of that. I wake up there and I just appreciate nature. Like, of course, it at, like, I'm talking in the beginning of my stay, right? Like, wake up and, like, just thinking, like, oh, I can't believe I'm here. Yeah, like, parang, it's such a nice feeling. And then, yeah, and then what I do, what I always try to do, is try to meditate at that time, because I wanted to, to be zen and all of that.
To make
But
the most
I
of it.
figured out that, like, I'm already, but I figured out, like, I'm already zen, because of, like, I'm not in the middle of chaos. So if you're in the city, you need that. But if you're there, your mind is already at peace. So yeah, I wake up and then like, my mind is just blank. Like, I'm awake and I'm just like, and then I check my phone, just make sure also that, like, I don't have an important email to attend
The
to.
business is still alive.
And then after that, yeah. So I check my phone, like, no clients are mad. Okay, I'm good, right? And then from my hut, I have like a big like a plastic Tupperware where all of my things are there. My laptop, my speaker, my camera, my fan, everything's there. And then so I just bring that down to where, like, the common area is, and I leave it there. And then I go straight to the Tagbanuas. They have a hut, and then in that hut they already have coffee. So they're already doing their Tagbanua coffee, and then I'll say hello and have coffee with them. And then that's the time that I already, like, talk to them, because that's the time that I asked them, like, oh, so what are you guys gonna do today? So it will be different activities. They may
And what
say, like,
language
oh,
were you speaking Tagalog, or because they speak Tagalog,
yeah,
or did you have to learn some of their own language? And what is even that language? Is it the Tagbanua? Like, is that what it's
yeah,
called, the Tagbanua language?
yeah, they have their own dialect, which is Tagbanua, and they also know different dialects. But since Palawan is part of Luzon, which is, the Philippines is divided into Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. Like where you were, Boracay, that's the Visayan
Besides,
part.
yeah.
Yeah, but in Palawan, everyone still speaks Tagalog. Uh, there are dialects, but everyone can understand Tagalog
Yeah.
in most of in the entire Palawan. So it was easy. It was even easier for me to actually communicate with them, because in some other, if I end up somewhere in, let's say, in more southern part, they will talk Bisaya, which is I'm not so good at. So I'll ask them, and then they'll tell me, oh, today we're just gonna harvest bamboo. We're gonna take the boat here. So that's the time that I actually decide to, okay, like, can I go with you guys? Because everything that is new, I want to cover. And then that's it. Like I actually I go with them, and then we come back, and then I'm in my that's breakfast, and then in the afternoon, that's the time where they invite me again. So I have my own area. So imagine that this is the cove. So it's a small cove. They're all here at this side, and then I'm here.
Yeah.
So I just walk there, and then I have a little like working area here. Because like I don't want to bother them all the time.
So
Because when
this,
I'm
I mean,
there,
just to explain a little bit further, the cove, it's probably what, like 300-400 meters wide? It's something almost out like the scene of the beach almost, where you're kind of, it's quite secluded, but you've got an open front to the
yeah.
sea. You've got the beach cove, like 300, is it about 300 meters, something like that?
Ooh, I'm so bad at like that. But like the beach. Are you talking about the Leonardo DiCaprio's The Beach?
Yeah, well, I'm
Yeah,
exaggerating that because I think that was also
yeah,
quite fictional.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
mean, you can kind of picture what
yeah,
the cove
yeah.
looks like.
It's smaller than that actually. Like I can walk from one end to the next in like maybe in 2 minutes. Yeah. So it's a very very small cove. So yeah, so we're very secluded, and it's the open ocean there, and you already have like a rich coral formation. So right then there in front, we can already like fish.
And you said they were harvesting bamboo. I assume they was like that was go off into the hills behind, or the small mountain perhaps, and then harvest the bamboo for boats and houses. Is that what they use the bamboo for?
Mostly for, yeah, structural thing like houses.
Yeah.
Like when they're building their they build their houses with using different wood, but bamboo is like one of the main
Yeah,
yeah.
it's one of my memories from from the Philippines in general. What even from our trip was the skill of woodwork, carpentry, just using bamboo is just amazing. Some of the structures that get built from just bamboo alone, bamboo and twine, in the Philippines, from like boats to houses, to houses. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, like there are different what do you call this, there are different types of bamboo, and they use it for different uses. So but yeah, like bamboo is like one of the go to material here in the Philippines. So easy, you can make your fence, you can make your house, you can make the outriggers of the boat, everything. They even like, well, not this particular tribe, but another tribe that I actually lived with also, but only for 2 days, 3 days. They cook in bamboo, so they use fresh bamboo. They put rice there, which I actually like just for fun. We actually did it in this island. So I told them, like, that this other tribe, they actually cooked with bamboo. Why don't we try it here? So we did, and of course they're so skillful with bamboo, right? So I just have to like tell them like the instructions how to
What they
do it.
did, yeah.
Yeah.
And what about? I was going to ask you, obviously you talking about how it was like living kind of in harmony with nature, and how they haven't necessarily changed. It sounds, changed some of the ways that they've, for hundreds of years. But did you notice a big effect? Obviously, as we are all very aware, as the world is developing at a crazy pace, like we're very aware of like destruction of natural resources, especially the ocean. Were there any things there that they like might have said, or you could see firsthand that whether it be just their fishing resources and things like that had recently changed, or was it just a gradual thing where they were just aware that I don't know, the fish stock had reduced and things? Were there any things that you really noticed that they might have changed kind of in the shorter term?
Well, when I actually, like I forgot to tell you, like when I'm talking about the tribes, I'm talking like in particularly with like the family that I lived with, because it's a big tribe, and they're living in different parts. But because since my friend was actually working with them, Red Carabao, so he actually educated them a lot about why. Of course, they know firsthand why they should protect, like the environment, nature, and everything. But it was also in a good way where, how do you call this? The tourists that comes there before pre-pandemic are actually the people who wants to act to really experience a different kind of, like beach hopping or living in an island, because they chose to actually stay with the tribes and learn how, like, cooking from them, weaving. And I think one of the best things that they see are, the tourists go there and they appreciate the coral reef, and it's for me it's a good, I guess, how do I say it? It's good that they see that the tourists are appreciating it and loving it, and telling them that, like, oh, you guys are, because that's how I was, like, you guys are so lucky. You know what? I've been to a lot of places, and the coral reef is not like this anymore. This is heaven on earth. So for them, it gives them pride and joy. But at the same time, since there are people that are coming there, of course, it helps them financially, because all of these tourists are also, of course, paying, and then they get a certain percentage. And now that they are actually, pre-pandemic, they were making money. They don't have to spear fish a lot. They don't have to do so much work. Because
like they made revenue from tourism.
Yes. So yeah, like, and then that's why they were protecting it, because there are still fishermen that use not the Tagbanua, but they use cyanide. So what they do is, they poison. They poison. Like they poison the fish and the corals. They put it, like, they get like an empty soft drinks plastic bottle, and then I guess I've never seen it firsthand, but that's how they told me they use it. So they put the solution in a plastic bottle, and then they dive, and then they want to get more fish and they don't want to spear fish, they're gonna just
spray it in there, an easy way
there. And the fishes, will be I don't know, high or a bit, like they will all float. And then that's how they collect it. And this is how they are protecting, because when they see that, one of the elderly was telling me that, from afar he sees it. They're like local fishermen, but not the tribe. And then he saw already the bottle, and he knew right away. So he shouted, and then he stormed with his spear gun. And of course, the fisherman was able to, the other fisherman was able to get away. But I think for me it's of course times are changing. They're like, there are tourists now. Before there were no tourists there. Tourists can't even stay in that land. But now you see them that are okay. We have to protect it more. So now that it's actually being appreciated with other people, and they're seeing that, they realize that this is the source of their livelihood, and that for me was like a story that made me feel like great, that like, okay, like these guys are gonna fight for their land and to protect it.
And what is the situation right now? Are they? It's. I mean, because we as tourists can't currently come in to the Philippines. But what is there? Is there any domestic travel, domestic tourism going on right now? Because obviously, one of the biggest, dilemmas that I guess governments are facing is the import, like especially in countries that have a high reliance on tourism and have always had good revenue, tourist dollars coming in. This has had a huge effect on a lot of countries, especially the ones we've seen firsthand that we work in. Is that open up domestically right now, or is that still closed?
For the longest time, it's especially Coron. It has been closed to domestic tourism, and then it opened up a bit. But then it's also it's a cat and mouse here also in the Philippines, because as you know, especially the provincial areas, they don't have the best hospitals as well. So what happens is they will open up for a bit, like, okay, so we're gonna open this month after 6 months of no infection. And of course, once you open the place up, like, sorry, wait, my phone is, yeah, I'm just gonna off the alarm.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, so yeah, that's it has been happening a lot of like it's a different situation for a different province or different islands in the Philippines, because it's run by different municipalities, different mayors, and different municipalities will have different facilities. But most provincial area, as you know, are sometimes there are no hospitals, and what more hospitals that can accommodate like the requirements of curing COVID or quarantine and all of that. So that's what's been happening. If there's like a if there's a if there's an infection, there's someone got there's a local transmission, there will be a temporary lockdown, like a week, 2 weeks. So it's so hard. It's so hard for hotels, tour companies to open, even restaurants, even more. Especially like in Palawan, Holy Week, the Easter week. It's actually one of the most profitable week, aside from Christmas, in a country like the Philippines, because everything will be fully booked. And I was in El Nido during Holy Week, and they were seeing a silver lining. They were saying like, okay, most of the not all the hotels were open. Only the hotels that are accredited in the Department of Tourism. It means they followed the rule, 50% capacity, quarantine, and all of that. And then that's why there are few places to choose from. And then people from Manila already booked. And then like a few days before Holy Week, Manila, the cases in Manila just rose up. It was like 10,000. It went to like 10,000 cases a day, and they had to shut it down. And yeah, like that silver lining where like most of the hotels and F&B were like looking forward to now was gone, because like people can't even land in Palawan. But I. Mhm.
Was there any, like, I guess I might know the answer to this, but was there any like support for small tourism businesses? Because the situation you're explaining is obviously playing out across the world, especially in tourism, heavy reliant tourism destinations, where a lot of places don't get the support, and it is really like the chicken and egg, where they desperate for tourism because that's their lifeblood, but at the same time they can't afford, the countries can't afford to import basically the virus, which has been happening. Open borders, people come in, make people sick. So like, yeah, has there been support where these like smaller businesses can access? I don't know whether they get government support. What's it been like? Is it regional or?
Yeah, well, sadly, no, because it's already been a year, and the first lockdown.
And they can't afford it.
Well, I'm talking in general. The first lockdown, um, first month of lockdown, there were a lot of like, like relief goods, because no one could actually go out, and the government had to give food. But nowadays, sadly, no. And a lot of, actually, like here, like in Palawan, a lot of people went back to fishing. A lot of people are now like, um, planting. So it's it's actually like the areas that are affected are like 90. Like if a particular place has like 90% of its income comes from like the tourism industry.
They've changed it.
That's what happened. Like people now, yeah, and Filipinos are very, how do you call this?
Resourceful.
Very resourceful, very resourceful. But I'm only speaking like in my behalf, because I've only been to Coron and Palawan, so it's still relatively easy to fish. Of course, you can't compare it from like 10 years ago, but it's different when like when the situation in Manila, where there is no like ocean, so like, and it's one of the most dense populated like cities in the world.
Mm.
But yeah, but in Palawan, as long as you're resourceful and you have a boat, you're not gonna get hungry. And that's why as well, here in the Philippines, it's becoming a trend. But this is a good trend though. Like there are community pantries. So one person started it in Manila. Just she put out shelves, and then she put out like, um, produce, and opened it to the public, and opened it for donation, and it got into the news. And now a lot of different people are actually, I mean, people from different provinces that are doing the same thing.
So what is it,
So
like a
now
food
people
bank
go
where the communities come together, the people that can afford it donate food, and then people that can't take the food? Is that what it is?
exactly. Yeah, so
Brilliant.
that's exactly what's happening. So yeah, like, but that's not the government, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's the story here for now. So yes, to answer your question, no, like the government is not doing enough
Yeah,
to
it's always
help the
it's going to
smaller
be,
businesses.
I think in the wider tourism space over the next few years, it's just going to be, I think you've already mentioned how local places, destinations that have relied on tourism are going to have to adapt in the short term. And then in the long term, it's really how the balance is between getting tourism back, the right kind of tourism. So you know, it's not overly popular, you know, not overpopulated, but then also can still provide support for, you know, those tourism dollars that so many of these communities need. I mean, I was speaking to our friends in Sri Lanka and India and Cambodia and stuff, and like they themselves, like their tourism businesses are completely, you know, they're on their knees. Okay, there's some domestic support, but I mean, our business ourselves, you know, it's been super tough with nobody's booking, or not a huge amount anyway, and it's very hard to plan moving forward. But you know, hopefully, as this you know, there's vaccine rollouts, and it'll slowly change in the next kind of 12 months, I think. The other thing I wanted to kind of jump from one super favorite island of mine to another, so Philippines to Sri Lanka, because that's actually how we first met and stuff. And I wanted to quickly, like I always ask people, there's always a bit of a link to our trips, but to go through like your memories of Sri Lanka. And I know you did it with two other friends of ours, Tom and Anna, but what were your memories of driving a tuk-tuk around Sri Lanka? And I mean, I'll get into some other questions now, but just in general, your memories of that trip.
Oh man, it's for me. It's just one like fun, like 10 to 11 days. It's still on like the top of my list. You know, like for me, like the Tagbanua experience was really amazing that it happened. But Sri Lanka, driving the tuk-tuk for 1,000 kilometers, 100 kilometers a day, and you know, and seeing Sri Lanka for the first time, and being and actually experiencing it very slow and fast at the same time with a different people from different walks of life. But it's amazing. It's for me, it's so hard to you know, to encapsulate it in one word, but it's as nothing short of like, it's amazing. It's one of the best like experiences that I had.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good to hear. Not any shameless self-promotion. What was your what were your key, like, I don't know, your best memories of that? And also, how does, like, obviously Sri Lanka is a much bigger island than the thousands of islands that are in the Philippines, and you know, each island and in the Philippines has its own, you know, special take of like either it's a different, slightly change on the language, like culinary bits, but like how would you even compare? It's probably an unfair question, but like, was it what you expected that Sri Lanka, because it was your first time there, was it what you expected?
Yes, and something even more, because like the main, like not the main difference, but in the Philippines, my friend, a really good friend, Jake, he also is a world traveler, and he told me that he's always excited because I bring him anywhere, and he's always excited when he rides a boat in the Philippines because he knows that he's gonna go to something amazing. You know, for Filipinos to go on a boat and a journey, it means that it's gonna be fucking worth it, right? Oh shit, can I curse? But yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's his understanding of the Philippines. You know, once I go to a boat, we're gonna go to something like fantastic. And with Sri Lanka, I never rode a boat, and it's one big island, and you know, in a tuk-tuk, I'll never really, well, okay, two things. Okay, one is the amazing thing about that trip in Sri Lanka is the landscape actually slowly reveals itself.
Yeah.
It's not like in the Philippines where, you know, I ride a bus and then a boat and then I see this island. But in Sri Lanka, it's just, you know, a really amazing road trip. And then suddenly you're in the like coastline, and then suddenly you're in the tea plantation, and then you are in like a different place. So that for me was like the beauty of Sri Lanka. And also, of course, the beautiful people that you will meet along the way. Like for me, that was the kind of like the similar things that I see in the Philippines and Sri Lanka. Like people are very kind and generous, like 90% of the time.
Yeah, I think it's
Uh,
an island thing.
yeah, so people are happy to be there, and I can't speak for anything, but only from experience. But like, in Sri Lanka, it's like no one was like trying to rip me off. Like, like it's different if you go to a very touristic place. But in Sri Lanka, people are just happy and people are like very accommodating.
Yeah, I think also because just the nature of the trip, like you're very quickly going off like the tourist path because you're
Mhm.
basically, I mean, you drive where you want to drive, right? So you're not forced to go from like A to B to C. So you could get lost quite quickly and be very quickly off the tourist path where it's then just human to human. There's no kind of prejudice of like you're a tourist and you're here. It's just natural interaction.
Yeah, and to add, just wait, just to add, like, because I'm not sure if I told you, but like, yeah, I'd love to like take this opportunity to thank you
Ah,
for the Sri Lanka trip because it really changed the way I traveled. I guess I was mature, like I was traveling, but I was getting like like at first it's every like good thing, not good thing, but like now of course people are saying like it's the Instagram TikTok thing now that they don't appreciate the place. They take pictures and that's it. As long as they check that on the list. But that's how who I was when I first started traveling. Right, it's all about landmark, location, good location, photo. That's it. But the Lanka challenge, how you guys designed the experience itself. It pushes you like us in a comfort zone, and it actually it encourages or no like it pushes you to really, since we can't use our phones for the GPS and we have to look for certain places that even if you cheat with your phone it's not there because it's like a local market. You're forced to actually go down and talk to locals and ask questions, and of course that particular challenge where you have to like cook with a local, knock on someone's door. For me, that left like a big like mark. Um, that's how I actually started traveling. After that, it's not really just to to eat with the locals, but to actually connect. And that's where I like you hear it from Anthony Bourdain all the time, right? Like you'll never really get to know someone till you sit down with them and eat with them. But that trip was amazing for me because it made me realize that it's possible to just knock on someone's door and share a meal with them. And I actually did that after. So I did that when I went to the Philippines. I was also getting a lot of like projects that I have to shoot in some province, and then I will tell the tricycle driver, can we pass by the market and buy a fish, and then can you take me to where the locals are. And I actually did that. Like it's everyone knows here how to cook a fish, how to grill a fish. And yeah, like for me, I think that was a big part of me, um seeing how what travel is. And that experience for me was like, okay, yeah, like because I realized like like every time we travel, we're like, okay, this travel I want to be different, like I want to connect, I want to do this, right? But at what happens is once you book your hotel and all of your tours and all of that, you actually eliminate any possibility of like
changing
like
or
and meeting the locals
spontaneity
because
and
yeah. And yeah, that for me was really an eye opener. That like, okay, like, because I'm not as, how do you call this? Like, I've met so many backpackers that are traveling, like they were traveling the world for like 9 months. I will always be surprised. I'm like, how can these guys travel for 9 months? I'm like, oh yeah, because they're in the first world country, they earn dollars or
Yes,
francs, and
exactly.
then they spend it here in the Philippines. Because for me, like, it was so mind boggling for me because I was kind of like a late bloomer as well. Like, I can't decipher how a guy can work construction work in Australia for 2 months and travel for 9 months. I can never put my mind into it because I'm a professional here and I still can't afford to do that, right? So Sri Lanka was a good, like a good environment for me to see that, like, okay, like it's this is how I want to travel. This is how I want to move from now on. It and ever since I've been a tuk-tuk lover. I drove tuk-tuks after that.
I was going to ask you. I mean, I have to say what you're saying there. Yeah, I'm so pleased to say that those kind of stories are common, in the sense that that's how I feel myself. Like that's how I travel when I go. It's kind
Mhm.
of those things also encourage me to do that. I remember when we were setting up our India trip for the first time. Um, the the guys, obviously with our local friends from the area saying, hey, this is what we do in some other places. Do you think it would be relevant, or do you think it would be fine to do here? And one example was obviously the cooking one. And at first they were like, you could see them thinking like, well, would that be like, maybe not. And then I think they were slightly, no, it probably won't be a good idea. And I said, well, let's try it. Let's do it. I'll go to the market. We'll get some nice, it was, obviously rice and fresh fish and whatever. And let's try. So we did it. And, so the same thing that we normally do in Sri Lanka, we did it in Kerala, in not very remote area, but just a normal area, like middle class kind of, and sure enough, the family was like, "What are you doing?" And then like, "Yeah, come in, like let's talk. Like, where are you from?"
Yeah,
And there's always a story of nowadays the world being so big, and in Kerala, like a lot of the families have relatives that work overseas. So there's always a story of my I've got a relative here, or and just that connection. Yeah, absolutely. It's so special. But to go back to your tuk-tuk, yes, I've been following a couple of pages in the Philippines because they have a very, obviously on some islands more than others, but there seems to be a very fast growing tuk-tuk, um, like inventory. Like there's, and also not only that, they also seem to be similar to Sri Lanka in the sense that they love, like these crazy fancy designs of like
hmm
speakers and decoration, and it seems to be taking off there. So yeah, what is it? Where the most tuk-tuks that you've seen? Because maybe we'll do something there.
yeah. I want to see more. Like one of the islands that I always drive like a tuk-tuk at is Siargao. Have you heard of Siargao?
I've heard of it, but I haven't been.
Okay, Siargao is one of like an amazing island. It's very popular because of surfing, because it has like world class waves, and there are, I guess, in any season you can surf in Siargao. And yeah, and they have tuk tuk for rent, and and I enjoyed it so much because, like, for me, like like in my mind is like driving a motorcycle is one of the best feelings in the world.
Yes.
It's like next to flying,
Yeah,
right?
I
You
agree
seem
with you.
like you're flying, you're vulnerable, you can feel the wind in your air, and of course it's also really, yeah, it can be dangerous.
Yeah, the speed, exactly. I
Yes,
feel you.
yes.
Yeah, 100%.
But for me, it's really good when you're alone. When you're driving a motorcycle when you're alone. But once you have someone at your back, it's not as good because you can't talk to them. You're in a helmet and you can't really, hey, what's up? You can't listen to the same music. It's just someone at your back. So I'm even more concerned when I'm turning, right? But the best solution there is a tuk tuk. So when you have a tuk-tuk, someone at your back, you guys can be listening at the same music. And and of course for me as well, whenever I travel, I have a big bag. I can't, like, I have my drone, I have my sadly, I have all of these gadgets, because if I don't bring them, I also feel bad, because once I go somewhere and I'm like, oh, why didn't I bring my lens and my drone and my tripod and all of that? So for me, I get it over with. Like, I'm always gonna have my gear. And having that big gear with a motorcycle, it's so hard to do also. That's why Tuk Tuk for me is so perfect, because if I meet new people along the way, it's so easy for me. I remember I was in another island in Dumaguete. It's near Cebu. And I went to a bar, and then I was meeting with my friends, and there were actually seven. But this is already, well, I mean, this is the Philippines, guys, and it's at night, and then like they're all girls, and they're like, Terrace, like, we want to transfer to another bar, and then all the seven girls were able to fit in the tuk tuk. Of course, it was like running really slow, but like I like just one person here, one person, and I think four at the back.
Yeah.
I can never do that with a motorcycle.
Yeah.
But I'm not just saying because of the girls, but it's such a fun, like, vehicle. Like, it's double the fun of a motorcycle.
Yeah, and it's quite hard to explain, because you've actually summed it up perfectly, because when you're alone on a motorbike, it's perfect. Like, it's perfect. You're free to do what you want. You can go as fast as you want. You can do what you want. And then the difference with, obviously, the tuk-tuk is, you've also, where it's different from a car, it's a bit slower, so you can take everything in. And then you also get access to the open sides. So you're like slow enough to literally stop, let someone jump in, talk to them, pull over. You're not flying past like at 100 mile an hour. You're cruising at like 40. So yeah, it's arguably the ultimate like tropical road trip vehicle. So maybe I'm a little bit biased, but
yeah, and that's what made the Lanka challenge so amazing, because imagine just what I described, but you're with your amazing friends and with different other people who are supposed to be your competitors at first, but then, like, of course, we can't always be, I want to meet the locals. Like, you don't feel that all the time. You don't feel like obliged, like, you don't feel that, like, sometimes you just don't want to, like, just want to take it easy. But because of the challenge, and you have that competitive side, you're not forced, but like, you're obliged to, like, okay, I'll meet the locals, let's go to the market. And then when you're there, you're like, okay, like, I'm super enjoying myself. Like, I remember we would stop at, like, one of the challenges were to teach English, like a English dance or song to, kids. And then we stopped at a public school in Sri Lanka, and we were there and we were teaching them, right? And at first I was like, it's so hot. And then when the kids saw us, they were all hugging us. And then it was so funny, because it was the graduation of, like, I guess it's not the actual graduation, but they were graduating for something that they did.
yeah.
And they called us up, and we were the ones on the stage, and we were the ones giving the diplomas.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And in a regular time, I wouldn't be as game like every time. Like, when I'm driving my tuk-tuk, I have my time, but I have those challenges. And that's the reason why I'm saying that it's such an amazing experience, because sometimes, like, you get, at first you get forced to go out and interact, and then when we finally did it, it was such an amazing experience. It's like something that, like, I will never forget. There were just so many magical, there you go, there were so many magical moments. And it's just a good realization of, when you're traveling, and you're overtaking, and you're like, oh, should I stop here? But no, it means that I have to overtruck this truck again. But then I'll always remember, like, oh yeah, like in Sri Lanka, what would have happened if I didn't stop? We didn't stop in that school. We didn't stop to do this. So it kind of like reminds me that like it's first of all it's not a race. You're not in a hurry, and you stop and then you interact with people, and yeah, like that's one of the big lessons, like very simple lesson that I learned from the Lanka experience is to first don't self doubt yourself. Like don't be shy. Like if you go to a community, introduce yourself. Like 90% of the time, you're welcome. 95, I think. You're welcome. You'll be able to eat with them. It's actually what I realized. It's actually me that like if I think that why am I not like why are there not a lot of interaction in this particular trip, and then I look at and I realize like, oh, I wasn't as open. I was just, maybe I was just so busy on my phone, or I'm doing a lot of things.
Yeah, so
uh,
true. Very true.
mhm.
It sounds like we need to. Well, I have been pestering you, but as soon as we know what is the outlook for the next kind of 12 months or something, it sounds like we need to get you back on another tuk-tuk in India or in
you
Italy.
know
I know your envy levels for Italy were pretty high.
Oh man, I was supposed to be in Italy. I told you, right? I had two weddings to attend to in Italy. So it was perfect. But of course, those two weddings got postponed, and it never really happened because like borders are still closed. But yeah, man, like in a heartbeat, I'll do tuk tuk again. I know that there's a question of like what I want, like what is the future of my travel, and you'll be surprised with this with my question because it involves also a tuk tuk.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to hearing that. I appreciate we've gone quite a long time, Terence. But before I go, where can people find like that story? I mean, I'll put stuff in the notes afterwards, but like, is it just how can they reach you or find you?
Okay, well, I'm most active on my Instagram. So it's at Terence Ver. So that's all letter E, TERENCEVER, victory. And my story is there actually in my bio. With experience with my Tagbanua experience, Vice News was like one of the first ones who actually got in touch with me and interviewed me because this was 2 months prior to the lockdown, and it was just it was just like a like a World Cup for people that are dying. So people are so tired of reading bad news,
Bad
and
news, yeah.
and they found me. He was like just cooking every day in this island with like with the tribes, and yeah, and then that's where they can actually hear the story, like the whole
Yeah.
story. And then there's also I can't announce it yet, but there's also like an international magazine that I'm talking to that we're gonna also re-release that story, and hopefully someday I'll make like a coffee table book about this story because I need to write about it. And it's still for me, I tried sitting down and choosing just 30 pictures that I did. I can't, man. Like it's like I'm already on 400 pictures. I can't print this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just I know that it's there. I'm gonna do it someday. But yeah, like on my Instagram, like they that's where my story is, most of it.
Brilliant. All right. Well, Terence, thanks so lot. Thank you very much for speaking to me. It's been brilliant and so nice to catch up over such a long time, after such a long time. And I hope we'll see you. It sounds like we might see you on a tuk-tuk soon. So take it easy, Terence. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you, and then see you in the tuk tuk.